Hey there, it's Tim from Boston Impressions, and guess what? You've just hit play on the Tell Me Three Things podcast. Great conversations with great people. So what's the deal here? Well, we'll dive into chats with some seriously cool folks from around the world of sales, marketing, and entertainment. But here's the catch. Every guest has to spill three things that gives us a sneak peek into what makes their story different. Welcome to Tell Me Three Things, where every chat might just lead you to discover something totally unexpected. Today's guest is someone who knows how to build brands, grow business, and stay grounded all at the same time. Joe Quattrone, a.k.a. QB, former media strategist turned marketing leader who spent decades with Gary Vaynerchuk and VaynerMedia, helping shape the landscape of brands like Budweiser and Anheuser-Busch and Bev. But what sets Joe apart isn't just his resume, it's his realness. He is a coach, a creator, a faith-driven father of four, and a champion for entrepreneurs who just want to do more than grow. From the back rooms to the backyards, Joe brings clarity, conviction, and a little bit of swagger to everything he touches. Let's go. Welcome, Joe Quattrone. Good to see you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So last time we were just talking about the last time we spoke was 4 years ago in the height of pandemic. You were working as the West Coast director of marketing for the Sasha Group, which is part of the VaynerX Group. And you now have uprooted your family again years later from the was it Beverly Hills area to Nashville. Tell me about that.
Well, when we went out to LA in the first place, I think it was 2019, and there really wasn't any reason we went out there other than Gary wanting to send me out there to help run the LA office. But when COVID hit, we really had to kind of look internally and see if that's really the right place for us. There was a lot going on societally at the time. You know, this was coming off the heels of like the George Floyd stuff up in Minnesota. LA was on fire. The riots had kind of spilled out in the streets during COVID. Homelessness was an epidemic out there. There was a lot going on in California, and to be quite honest, the government was a little bit draconian with their rules around even just like going for walks outside. You could get a ticket for doing that. I remember all of the parks were closed, the beaches were closed, and for somebody that has a lot of young kids, outdoor time is essential. So, we just got kind of tired of it, and we wound up choosing a place that was 180 degrees polar opposite, not intentionally, but that's kind of just how it worked out. When we looked at the landscape of the map, after I had asked Gary and James, if they didn't mind whether or not I moved and managed my team remote, we kind of became free agents. And for the first time in my life, I could move somewhere, or first time in my career, I guess I should say, I could move somewhere without necessarily having to be anchored to a city, a geography that was based on my work. And we chose Nashville because it's got a really good long-term trajectory in terms of a market. And, the job economy is going to be great for years here. The schools are top notch. We're in Williamson County, so just south of Nashville. So for a family that's now of six, those things were very important.
That's wild. I mean, out in California, of course, unless you were the governor during that time, you couldn't go real anywhere, right? I mean, Newsom didn't invite you to the French Laundry for dinner.
I didn't get that invite. It must have got lost in the mail because all the mailmen were not working. So
That's true. That's true. Well, so you were at Vayner, Sasha, for a while, and before that you were at I believe Group M, which is also in the marketing space, where you did some work before that, even with an agency around the brand Audi, if I remember correctly. So what lessons did you carry from your time at Sasha and Vayner now that you've basically launched your own thing, and how was that? How hard a decision was that to separate yourself from a rocket, which is Gary V and VaynerX?
It wasn't hard at all. I think it was hard to do in the sense of like you don't want to necessarily disrupt a good thing, right? So life was good. Me and Gary are friends. We're still friends to this day. I text him every once in a while. It was good, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't something that really kind of filled my brand purpose up very much. I was always just doing great things for other people. And so while I cherish those years, I have no hard feelings. I loved my time there. I loved the people there. Eventually, I just got kind of wanderlust and decided that I needed to go out and launch something for myself. And the way that kind of manifested itself, at least at first, was I didn't really know what that thing was. So I just launched a consultancy and just kind of took advantage of my network and was able to like stitch together an ecosystem of clients that were able to keep a roof over my head and keep my kids fed and stuff like that. And
important things, right?
And I'd say for the lessons from that, I mean, those types of businesses run very similarly to VaynerMedia or any ad agency for that matter. When you were at my level, when you're at like SCP or something like that, you're pretty much a general contractor. But the main difference is, inside of a VaynerX, you've got ample amount of resource and infrastructure to build within. When you're out on your own, you've got to kind of pull together all the odds and ends and bits and bobs with people that aren't part of the W-2 workforce. So there's a lot of vetting, a lot of trust that you got to put into people that you hardly know and stuff like that.
Right.
So that can be challenging. But I've had a good time over the first 2 years of the consultancy. It's gone through different iterations and different, structures. Most recently, I've been trying to focus a little bit less on it while I'm kind of like concentrating my efforts on fewer clients to try to have more impact on the brands. Mm-hmm. And then what I'm doing to scale up is I'm just leveraging my network in a different way. Now I also run Quattrone Brands as more of a like a talent resourcing agency. So like I've got tons of friends out there that are looking for part-time work. They tend to be a little bit more senior because I've been in marketing for 2 decades. So a lot of fractional chief marketing officers, operations people, marketing directors, you name it, creative, chief creative officers. I've got a lot of friends in that world, design. So what I've kind of focused on instead of growing an agency, because my intent was never to leave Vayner to go create my own agency. I don't really love that model. But now that I've got the idea of focusing a little bit more on fewer brands, I still want to be able to help people and I want to be able to scale things. And I think the thing that I can offer to a lot of people in my network is they're all thinking the same thing. They've been in ad agencies or they've been in marketing for 20 years. They're looking to get out. They're looking to see what's next. But oftentimes just finding another agency to call home isn't a very attractive option. Most people have been there, done that. They don't want to do it anymore. They're also tired of the office politics. They're tired of, other people, other brands getting rich off of their backs. So they want to go out into business for themselves. They just don't know how. So part of what I do outside of the few brands that I actually touch right now and actually do fractional chief marketing officer work for is I chaperone these people into this world. I show them how to do the business development. I write all their contracts for them. I do the project management for them. I make sure that I'm giving them good advice. I'm stopping short of giving them like tax advice and legal advice, but I'm making sure that they're actually setting their business up in the right way. And I'm also able to offer them ancillary services like backfilling them if they need to go on a vacation. Either I can step in or I can find somebody else to step in. So they don't really have to worry all that much about it being so super frightening. All they need to do is have some extra time, like 5 to 15 hours a week, whether it be at nights or on the weekends, in the desire to kind of get their feet wet and start consulting.
That's amazing. It seems like you've not only created but filled a niche in between the client and either a small to mid-size agency. You're right there in a niche that maybe people have always been looking for.
Yeah, because I think I've bared witness to this. I don't think it's necessarily anything that is reflective on my time in the agency world, but I've seen it happen to multiple people. It's the classic story, right? You go to the big city when you get out of college, you work your way up the ladder, you gain 10, 15, 20 years experience. Then you're burnt out. You want to slow down. You start getting married. You start having kids. You start going into the suburbs. All of a sudden you're old and you cost a lot of money. And a lot of these agencies, they're under a tremendous amount of pressure from Fortune 500 companies to tighten the belt and lower rates and, push out payment terms and essentially work for free and earn their margin on the back end. Well, it's really hard to do that when your base level staff and the leadership amongst it are so expensive. So I understand why things are the way they are. But what I would like to do is build a bridge so that a lot of people are going to enter their 40s and 50s and they're going to get a rude awakening and they're not going to be prepared to go out and start doing consulting. But they're going to have to, because there's not a lot of people that are going to be knocking down their door to try to hire them and pay them $300,000-$400,000. So
Right.
if they want to keep making that kind of money, it's not hard to do, right? Getting out and making what you want to make it's not hard. It's not impossible. You just have to figure out how to do it. You have to figure out how to structure, your business the right way, what kind of services to offer, what kind of formation of your business do you want to have, because that has tax implications, all those types of things. So I try to make sure that people like that have an easier time doing what they want to do anyway.
So, it being a fractional CMO, which you are doing for a lot of clients, must be refreshing, because you're not only working for one brand, you're working for a lot of different ones.
Well, no, it's actually very frustrating. So I don't like the idea of working for a lot of different brands. That's why I've been trying to figure out a different way to position my company. So instead of creating an agency and building structure around all these different brands, I more want to create kind of the base level products and help other people institute within the hallways of those brands. I'd say the refreshing thing about what I'm doing, probably compared to agency life, is because it's my own company, I get to choose which clients I take. So I don't get stuck working in industries I don't want to work in. I don't get stuck working for CEOs that are assholes. I pick and choose very selectively who I spend my time on.
That's great. We've been having conversations here in our we're a little boutique agency. I went down to Fort Lauderdale for a sales conference with some other business leaders. And I stepped away from there going, we need to focus more on the top 5 things we do well, and learn to say no a little bit. So can you tell me, how do you, this is like free sales. This is free coaching advice that I'm getting from you. So you figured out that I'm really not interviewing. I'm just picking your brain. How do you say no? When do you know when to say no?
Yeah. I think for me, it's pretty easy. It's not knowing when to say no. It's all about how do you protect your time. So usually when I start out with any organization, whether it be a full-time job as a W-2 employee or as a consultant that's going to come in and be a change agent within your organization, I find that every organization is slightly different, but most of the time, the people that are looking at you and staring at you and trying to figure out what it is that you do, they need to be communicated with in a way where they can be crystal clear in terms of what's in bounds, what's out of bounds. How should they interact with you? How should they not interact with you? Don't necessarily go into an opportunity thinking that everybody's got to kowtow to your behaviors and they've got to pick it up on the fly and they've got to learn it, or don't assume that they know it just because of how senior you are and stuff like that. At the same time, don't come in, hair on fire and be a total jerk, because you're going to, there's an old saying that sometimes the body rejects the organ, when you're going to transplant. That will happen to you really fast if you come into somebody else's organization with their own culture and you come in acting like you are going to, what's best for everybody. But one thing that I try to do is I try to figure out what is the common denominator that kind of binds all people. And that's usually time, right? The word time, the aspects of time, it's stuff that you can spend, but you can never get back. So you're from day one, when you're born, you're always depleting time. You're never gaining more time. So I try to make sure people know that they're all valued and that their time is precious. So here's who I am. Here's what my life looks like. Here's what I was hired to do. And now let's talk about how you communicate with me and how I communicate with you. So, and there's some very basic tenets that are kind of the rules of the road. Number one, I try to attack email etiquette, right? Email is where a lot of people live. So I want them to know how often I check my email. Am I an inbox zero guy? Am I not? Will they be getting a response from me within a specific amount of time? And so like what I try to typically say is, and this is just me, everybody might be slightly different. I am an inbox zero guy, but I only check my emails for about a half hour a day, twice a day. So about an hour a day, 2 half-hour blocks, one at the beginning, one at the end. I'm also like micromanager when it comes to filtering out stuff that should not be coming to me. So I know how to maximize all the technology to kind of take what would look ordinarily to most people like a 3,000 email day and cut it down to a 100 email day. And then of those 100 emails, I'm answering about 50 in the morning and 50 at night.
That's great.
So I tell people that, and there's a very specific reason I tell people that. I tell them that because I want them to know that I'm not chained to my computer all day long. So if you need a response from me, and it's not urgent, then email is perfectly sustainable way to communicate. You send it to me, you'll get a response within 24 hours, right? But if you need me a little faster than that, you're going to have to pick up a phone and text me. And I don't mind you texting. Some people do. I'm a person that doesn't mind when you text me. You're often going to get a response within 5 minutes. May not always be 5 minutes. If I'm on a call, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing unless my wife's in labor. I'll have my phone there. It'll be palms up so I can see that you're texting me, but I'm not going to answer when I'm in a call with somebody else. The only way you can get an immediate answer from me typically is if you call me. And if you call me and I'm in a meeting and I see that it's emergency because you've texted a bunch of times, I'll step out and take it. And then, so once I've addressed that, right, the baseline way of connecting, then I try to give them some helpful tips on how to manage their own time and why it's important to treat everybody around them with respect. So then I attack meetings. And I say meetings are a scourge on society because most people don't know how to run them. There's no college level class on how to run them effectively. And what gives you special access to just throw calendar invites on my calendar without asking me to do it? So I typically keep some rules of the road there, which prohibit people from having bad meetings. Number one, if you invite me to a meeting, and you mark me as optional, if I'm optional, I'm not coming. Just know that if I'm mandated to be in a meeting and I don't have 3 other people competing for my time in that time frame, I'll join. But the criteria I look for when I typically accept a meeting is that it has an objective and it has an agenda. And if you've gone through those 2 exercises, then you typically know how long a meeting should be. Because if you've planned an agenda for a meeting and it's 4 bullets long, it should be around 15 to 20 minutes if it's run effectively. But I also usually tell people that this is the culture. If you set the meeting, then you're responsible for the meeting. I'm not coming into the meeting expecting that I'm going to run it. You're running it and I'm reacting to it. And then you're also responsible for taking notes and distributing them afterwards. And it's that last piece where I usually get them. That's where meetings and organizations go from, everybody's in half a day's worth of meetings every day to, okay, now we're having 1 or 2 meetings a day kind of thing, because most people don't want to set meetings. Most people don't want to think through the agenda. Most people don't want to take notes, and most people don't want to be responsible for moving the project forward after hours. So great, fantastic. Like I said, meetings are a scourge in society. What's done in a meeting can typically be a text message, or it could be a Marco Polo message, or it could be, something we catch up on at the water cooler or something like that. Unless it's like a campaign and it requires a lot of orchestration, don't put me in a meeting if you don't have to put me in a meeting.
That sounds like a guy from experience. That's a guy who's been in some meetings that have just been ridiculous, right?
Well, that's not just that. It's like, you've been there before. You run an agency. The worst possible feeling you can get is that you start a week and then the week is over just like that because you did nothing but spend time in meetings like 80% of the time. And the people that were running the meetings, you get frustrated with because they're not actually managing your time appropriately. They're just sticking you in a cell all day long and expecting you to be on your toes and actually give them good advice and good feedback. Humans aren't meant to be contained like that. We don't do our best thinking in environments like that. So build a relationship with people outside of meetings. Figure out a way to get what you need from them without having to stick a bunch of people in a conference room. is usually
Well,
my best friend.
this might be the answer to this next question: is what is the most outdated business practice that you wish everyone would stop immediately?
Well, I would say meetings in general, but I do want to give some grace to, not all meetings are bad. It's just bad meetings are bad. And the problem with most meetings that they're, like I said before, not enough people are training people on how to have meetings. So if every organization ran super harmoniously with the same set of rules and there was the same expectations, the same outcomes, I would say I would love going to meetings
Right.
because I could just let somebody put on this big show and I have to just sit there and give my inputs. But oftentimes you've got people who are scared. They don't know what to do. They're just throwing together something because they need to like say their piece in 2 sentences or less and then make you do all the work. That's not a good feeling. I don't want to get into meetings and have everything be hair on fire. Like, please solve my life, solve my job for me kind of things.
Hmm.
I'd rather have people be very thoughtful when they organize and schedule and produce the meetings and and understand it's not just me. It's not just your senior leadership whose time is valuable. It's your own time that's valuable. It's everybody around you whose time is valuable. And if we could
Right.
have a much more structured environment when it comes to those things, then the mood and the atmosphere and the culture will benefit.
Tell me what your average day is like now compared to what it used to be. If you could just walk us through that, and I know, and the second follow up is that you spent some time in personal branding, right? Helping people personal brand themselves. What is the most underrated skill in that?
Well, those are two way different questions. So let me start with my typical day.
Right.
Like I said before, I've been in the process of thinning out the amount of accounts I have, mainly because I've latched onto some pretty great companies with some good leaders. And what typically happens is they want more of my time than they can afford. So, but that's kind of where I want to be. I want to be in a place where I'm valued and wanted and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So it's not as crazy as it maybe was a year ago where I had like 7 or 8 clients and I was running around not being able to develop my business at all and stuff like that. Now it's much more like 2 to 3. Two of them are in the same industry, and then the other one is in a completely different category. So it's just about kind of time blocking and making sure that I'm giving each client enough attention and that I'm moving projects forward to the best of my ability.
Right.
But on each instance and each accord, in two of the instances, I've got fully staffed up underneath me. So I've got teams in different parts of the world that are executing content, strategy, paid media, all that kind of stuff. So it's really my involvement in them is to come in, understand the landscape, figure out the strategy for growth, set the tempo, right? And then just
Hmm.
manage that tempo and that growth. And then the other one I have is more a consulting, like a pure consulting, almost like CMO training kind of gig where a friend of the family, not my family, but one of my CEO's families, he had a family member who he's trying to groom into a CMO, but she comes from a different part of the economy. She's not
Right.
necessarily like a marketer by trade. So I'm coming in for an intensive 6 months to kind of get her up to speed so she can do her job more efficiently.
That's
So
great.
it's just kind of dividing time amongst those kind of opportunities.
Hmm.
And then also saving time for my passion projects. So part of why I launched Quattrone Brands wasn't just to go do fractional CMO work. And it wasn't even to place people into fractional CMO jobs, but I wanted to also be founder, equity partner, creator of brands, and launch brands out of Quattrone Brands as well. And so whenever I find any ancillary time, it all goes to that. So brand,
That's well when you do
brand,
right.
yeah, there's a brand that I'm one of the initial founders on that's in the coffee space. I have my own line of cleaning products that I've been developing called Miss
I
Leanne's.
saw that. That was on
Um,
that was on my question. Tell me about that a little. Miss Lee and Standard. What is that?
it's a hard story to tell, but what I'll tell is that it's a labor of love. So I'm the neat freak of the family, so everything has to be clean around me at all times, which is very frustrating, most likely to my wife. But my wife isn't as much of a neat freak, but she has very high standards when it comes to clean ingredients, clean living, low ingredient, low toxicity. She's very healthy and stuff like that. So naturally, she would want all of our cleaning supplies in our house to be non-toxic, no bleach, no ammonia, no nothing like that. And when she basically gave me an ultimatum, and she basically said, no more crap, concentrated products, no more toxins she even made me go to the extent where I had to hire a very specific lawn care company that would promise me they wouldn't use glyphosate in their fertilizer.
That's wild.
And so, but me being like very problem solution oriented, like I want to overcome obstacles, was like, okay, well, everything she's bringing back, like all these natural eco-friendly products from Whole Foods and Sprouts, they just either couldn't do the job to my standard, or they smelled awful, and I didn't want to clean with them. So I started developing this product maybe 8 months ago, not even thinking it was going to be a product. It was just a recipe. It was a homemade brew, if you will. And just through tinkering around a little bit, I know a little bit about ingredients because I've worked in CPG for a long time, but I've also, because I'm into cleaning, like I've watched YouTube videos of like butlers getting stains out of Duchess's garments and stuff like that. So I kind of have been like trying to understand the science of ingredients for a long time. Something in me decided to make a low ingredient recipe because I wanted to just do it from scratch and see if I could save money, see if I could save time, see if I could outduel what was on the market, if you will. And I came up with this little 5 ingredient concoction. It's only got cleaning vinegar, soap, hydrogen peroxide, oil of oregano, and essential oils in it. And I think it was because I was also really into aromatics, because my wife wouldn't let me do anything with candles because she was worried about carcinogens. She's also a hypochondriac on top of things. Everything is going to cause cancer. So nothing that burns, no nothing. So I was researching kind of how some retail stores, make their stores aromatic without using candles, because they don't want to, obviously it's fire hazard. They don't want their stores to burn down. And I came across the fact that some stores, they have, test kitchens in the back of their stores where they simmer like hot pots of water with like orange peels and vanilla and clove and stuff like that, and they just let it simmer all day long, and their store smells amazing. So I was doing some of that in my home, and then one day I did the crossover thing where I was like, I wonder if like I make this supply, which I think smells amazing, and I put it in hot water and I start wiping things down like you would clean a car. I was like, I wonder if that could be something. And so I tried it out, and of course, my house smelled amazing for like up to like 8 hours after I left for the day. And so I thought I was onto something. So it wasn't until this past April where I was just sitting around thinking to myself, because I had recently been doing a lot of work for clients, developing line extensions, things like that on ChatGPT and using AI.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I had even the thought of, I wonder if this could be a product. And I just went over to ChatGPT and said, hey, I've been making this thing, and here's the ingredient panel, and here's what I'm doing it for. I'm using hot water. I don't see anything on the market that looks like it's recommending hot water and stuff like that. And it's been amazing. And I started rattling off all these facts and figures and stuff like that. And that conversation with AI kind of gave me the confidence to say, hey, like there could be a market here for this, because it was really tapping into a convergence of like 3 or 4 different categories. And so I just decided, instead of like, raising money and making a big deal and stuff like that, when this is an unknown commodity, nobody's ever really cleaned this way. I just decided to like bottle it myself, do everything myself, just get a test case in the market, and see if other people like the way it works and get some feedback and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm still at the like home brew, small batch, like few hundred, pieces of supply, a small Shopify product page and stuff like that.
I was going to say, where can we buy it? That's what I want to know.
Well, yeah. So I did set up a Shopify page, and the URL is cleanerstandards.com. And
Okay.
it's still under construction, so forgive me if it looks like trash, but you can actually buy product through it. And it will be looking a lot better in the nearing weeks as I start getting my photography up on the website and I start hiring a developer to actually make it work better and stuff like that. But
Amazing. Good
yeah.
for you. Where do you find the time with 4 kids running, your consultancy and now putting out a product? When do you find the time to do anything else?
I think you just try to, everybody says you have no time, but, you really are honest with yourself. If you really ask for the Lord to reflect on how you spend your time, you can find the time. Like, a lot of people say they have no time, but then you open up your screen time and you see, well, how was that 50 hours of Instagram you spent this month? How did you really,
Right.
how did you love your 4 hours a day of scrolling on YouTube or listening to YouTube videos? And there's also a lot of untapped time, and that people don't even realize. Like, I get so much work done when I'm driving around. Like, I'd say like a good 20-30% of my life is thinking, like, on the job, thinking through scenarios, thinking through situations, being able to document things, but really kind of like in that kind of self brainstorm mode. And because I have a lot of kids, I'm always driving. I'm taking kids to ballet practice and football practice and stuff like that. And so I find myself by myself quite a bit in behind the wheel of a car. And that's where a lot of my creative juices start flowing. And then as long as I have a mechanism, like I can open up an app and just talk into it, like I can record stuff and I can get things down on paper and get it saved and come back to it later.
That's amazing. Well, there's 2 other things I want to talk to you about before I let you go, and I really do appreciate the time. Is one, AI. You mentioned AI, and in the scheme of our business, even in the 4 years that we have known each other, it came out of it came out of nowhere to the market. So tell me, ChatGPT, every other day there's a new tool coming out. Was it Google just came out with a VO3? So tell me, what do you think is next? Tell me what your thoughts on AI agents are, whether that could be next, and how that might fit into your business and your long-term business strategy for some of your clients.
It's kind of hard to predict what's next, but I can give you some anecdotes. I think AI agents could be really powerful, but in a different way than most people are thinking. I think most people take like the current standard operating procedure and just, extrapolate it out across like 200 AI agents and stuff like that. And think, oh, look at how efficient we'll be. But I think you're making yourself go through the wrong exercise if you're just extrapolating out modern technologies or modern processes with the usage of AI, right?
Okay.
What I would say, the more powerful thing is how can we use AI to completely transform the economy and the way we live and stuff like that. So like, yes, I do think there are going to be job markets disrupted. Yes, I think there's going to be a lot of people out of work. But yes, also, I feel like job markets are going to crop up out of nowhere because of the usage of AI. So like, I think the labor force is going to look radically different over the next 20 years. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So I'm always like a technology optimist. Are robots going to come over and, basically take over our species and put us out of business as a species? I doubt it. I somehow I don't think that that's necessarily the case. But in terms of where I think people can really deploy the technology is how can you do things that you don't want to do necessarily? And I'm not talking about going out and farming in the fields, right? Like that's what most people think, that AI and robots and technology, they're going to take jobs we don't want. Well, sometimes it's not about taking jobs we don't want. Sometimes it's about efficiently setting up jobs that could be done by us, but they're only like part-time jobs. Something like I think I heard that there's a version of ChatGPT coming where you can upload your information, like your credit cards, your address, your, information about yourself and stuff like that. And that it can go out if you direct it with like, hey, I need to set up a C corporation and we're going to be doing this and this and that. It can set up your business for you. It could act as your lawyer. It could act as whatever. It could act as your accountant. It can actually send out, all of the purchase orders so you can procure goods and stuff like that. So really taking over a lot of like early days operations and logistics that you don't, not only that you don't have time for, but you don't even have the wherewithal of how to do it. Like, you know how many things,
Right.
I'm learning this now, but like just the standard things of getting a product off the ground, just the provisional patents, the non-provisional patents, the trademarks, the URLs, the social handles, like all these things. Do you want to go out and hire one person to do that and pay them a good chunk of money? Or do you want to pay like $200 a month to have that done across the board? Right.
Yeah.
You're seeing that more disruptive in the ad agency world, in my opinion, with things like, Firefly and Read AI and all these note takers that join meetings and do what we used to put, entry level, people on. I had nothing against your entry level employee out there. I mean, I was one at one point, so you have to have empathy there. But like, to be honest with you, if I'm running an agency in New York City, I mean, at VaynerMedia, back when I started in 2014 at VaynerMedia, we probably had 70 entry level account managers that were making 40, 50 grand a year. I'd rather spend $300 a year on a really good AI note taker than hire 40, 50 grand note taker. You know what I mean?
Right. We use it every day. We use it every day in every meeting. In fact, I also have one of these, a plod note that goes on the back of your phone and will record a call and then give you a summary. It's wild how.
Yeah, and I think honestly, from a business development standpoint, like sales and stuff like that, like I get flawless notes back from AI. Like I know exactly what I did wrong on a sales call. I know exactly how to fix it. How much do you think the young junior employee that's afraid of the senior grizzled veteran is going to tell them the truth about how they ran that meeting? You know what I mean?
Right.
So sometimes you really need an unbiased filter to be able to kind of help give you a second set of eyes. When I was in grad school, we had a presentation. I don't know what to call him, but he was basically, he helped us learn how to pitch essentially. And, this was before AI. He would film us. He would give us important projects, stand us up in front of 50 people, film us the whole time. And then the next week we had to watch ourselves and see what we did wrong. we had to keep going back up, again, in front of 50, 100, 200 people, keep going into the slaughtering house. And we just, we just refined the technique and got good at it eventually.
Do you think that as a disruptive in marketing that SEO as we know it is on its last legs when it comes to AI being, with Google changing things the way they've been changing them?
No, not really. I think it's just going to be, like I said before, I think it's just going to be different. I think we got to stop thinking about things in terms of like the way we've always done them. Like it's changing right in front of our very eyes. There was Google for 2 decades and people thought that Amazon was going to come in with the device, the skills of Amazon Alexa and all that kind of stuff and really upend search. Didn't really take much away from Google. But ChatGPT and all of the AI, they are going to put a significant damage into Google's market share, which in my opinion is a good thing. Google is great. I use Google for business. I use Google for a lot of things in my life. We need more competition in that space, right? We need to figure out a way to make search results when people are trying, if you think about the act of searching for something, usually that's an act that we're taking as people to make ourselves more intelligent or to find an answer to something. Why would you want to let one company have all of the market share when it comes to providing results for searches? So I think about AI as a very healthy competitor to Google. And I'm interested to see what those all evolve into. Right now it's just search, but like, is there a different way to serve up and yield results to people when they need something with a snap of a finger? I think what you'll start to see is a lot of companies like Google are going to start leaning into hardware more. You're already starting to see Apple. They're coming out with a real interesting glasses product. So if you don't have an answer for the AI, then you're going to go hard into hardware. And you're going to win on brand. Right.
That's great. So, this is, I didn't mean to leave this for last, but I think it's important. I would like to talk to you about your faith and your personal values. And I want to find out how your Christian faith has influenced your approach to leadership in business, because I think it's amazing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I grew up Catholic, and I wouldn't say I didn't like it, because that wasn't really like the feeling. It's just I had a feeling that I was going into this because I was going into my faith in a way in which I was being forced into it. It's just, I came from a Roman Catholic family. That's just what you do. You go in and you go to, religious classes, and you go become an altar boy, and you do the whole thing. But in all of that pageantry where you observing all the sacraments in every mass and stuff like that, you don't really learn the Bible all that much. As a kid, you typically kind of resist it. You learn the basics, right? Like, your parents and your grandparents always kind of reinforce, the 10 Commandments and make sure that you're not doing things by guilting you and shaming you out of them. But then, people go to college, they kind of drift away. Like, I'm no different than other people. I went to college, I drifted away because, there's only so long you can, withhold certain things.
Right. I get you.
If you're not getting married at 14, like you used to when a lot of these things were created. So you you stray a little bit. And then, what I find is you typically find your way back, and you define it, or you approach it how you want to approach it when you're ready to approach it again. And I think I'm very similar to a lot of people's paths. I found my way back to God when I was 39, and it was not ironically that it was a couple years after my first couple kids were born, and I was trying to figure out a better, more values driven way to run a household. I didn't want to be shooting from the hip and guiding these children through life without a good moral compass. And I didn't want to be morally vacant. So, with tears in my eyes after struggling mightily on a couple things from a career perspective, I would consider myself saved at age 39. That was
nice.
Some 7 years ago now. and I still find myself a baby in the faith. We kind of settled, me and my wife did, on the Presbyterian church because she was a Baptist, I was a Catholic, and you just kind of wanted to meet somewhere in the middle. It was kind of funny. She wanted the hymns and the sacraments and the tradition and the pomp and circumstance, and I wanted to get away from it, and I wanted the praise music and the hardcore New Testament teachings and, how to, be a man after Jesus's heart. And so I would have gone even deeper into non-denominational if she would have let me, but we kind of met in the middle at Presbyterian because it offered some of the structure, but also offered, some of the Protestantism that I was kind of seeking and craving. But outside of I think the interesting part about the way I practice is that since we moved to Tennessee from LA, you would have thought that I would be in Bible heaven down here, but I'm not. It's not a place that has a ton to offer that me and my wife can both agree on. So,
oh, really?
Everything is
surprising.
Well, it's I would say similar to LA, but in a different way. In both locations, politics tends to get in the way of the message, and it's not that I didn't notice it in LA because I did. But here it's just, I think it's because it's so rooted in routine. Everybody here goes to church, and everybody goes to the certain types of church. Most of it is praise music. And then you see the next day people are at war with each other. They're going to church one day, putting on a nice face, nice hat or whatever. And then the next day your same people that are your neighbors are biting each other's head off if somebody drives too fast in the neighborhood and stuff like that. And you're right. I don't really want to, surround myself with people that are going to be fake. Essentially, they're going to try to put on the veil of religion on Sundays because God's watching, but then every other day of the week, not care or participate too much. I'm the kind of guy that I'm, 4 or 5 days a week when I'm driving, I'm listening to praise music. It's always on. Right. I'm reading the Bible. I'm using the Bible to get out of situations where I'm stuck at work or at home in my home life. But I'm not even churched right now. I don't belong to a church in Nashville. And that's kind of by design. It's because I don't really like all the extra stuff that goes along with it. Me and my wife she will not go into Church of the City or Gateway Church or any of those places. She hears the music and it completely makes her blood boil. Whereas it's not as bad to me. I can still go into a Catholic church and I can listen to the music. It's not my favorite. It's not my cup of tea, but I'm not going to say no to it because it's getting me into church. But I do find typically that, your more Orthodox or your more Catholic types of churches, I feel like their messages are a little bit out of touch and a little bit I wouldn't say non-contemporary, but like their cadence is very, kind of monotonous, and the way they deliver the message isn't as passionate. So I tend to kind of nod off in church, to be honest with you. Whereas I can go through the week, and if I'm listening to praise music, I'm reading my Bible, if I'm listening to sermons on podcasts and stuff like that, I'm doing my own thing, right? And where I think the one thing that I'm missing mostly is just a way to kind of connect into a community, a way to tithe back in certain ways, and
Right.
give back some of my own money, or give back some of God's money, to be honest with you.
Right.
That's the thing that I miss the most. But, we're trying. I've got 4 kids, so I keep relatively busy in that regard. And what I'm really trying to figure out is how does my passion and fuel for scripture and faith, how does that rub off and resonate with my kids when we're not putting them in an organized environment? And so
that door might open.
Yeah, with
That
some
door
of
might
it's
open
easier
for you.
than others. Like my son, he wants me to pray over him every night, right? My daughter, not so much. So it's like,
Right.
we're just trying to fit. But at the same point, I kind of like it when they want to participate voluntarily. I don't want to force them into it.
Sure. That's great. How has that faith driven your business and the decisions you've made in your business?
Oh, a lot. So every time I've had some sort of a foundational moment in the business, it's always based on some scriptural element that I'm reading about. Like when I formed my business and I left Gary, I was really into reading Corinthians, and there was a verse from 2 Corinthians. I can't really recite it because I'm not really good at memorizing Bible verses, but to the extent it was like, you got to walk by faith and not by sight, meaning like, don't be Thomas in the Acts of the Apostles, where he comes back after the resurrection and doesn't believe people unless Jesus is standing right in front of him. Don't be that guy. Understand that Jesus is there. That's why you have faith, and that your business and all the decisions you make, they're not really up to you. They're kind of divined by God anyway. You're just playing along in his game. So that's why I say faith, but not by sight, because God wanted me to form this business. God's putting me in this position to do these things. So try your best to kind of interpret the signs that are in front of you, but don't try to resist them too much. And when I do that, my business is typically in a pretty good season. And when I don't do that, when I think I've got all the answers, and when I try to force my own, thing down the throat of my business, that's usually when my business goes through the winter type seasons. And then more recently, as I've kind of had more of this season of life where I wanted to kind of thin out the herd a little bit, work on less clients, really start focusing in any spare hours I have on things like this. I've been resonating with Colossians chapter 3. There was an element of it where it was I think it was chapter 3, verse 23. And it was essentially telling you that you have to work very hard as if God is your boss, right? And at first I was like, that's kind of weird. How do you do that? But then the more and more I thought about it, and it was like, it was more of a purpose thing for me. It's like, yes, I'm glad that I'm working on less clients. I'm glad that I'm doing that because I can get to the CEO founder level story with those connections on those brands. But I also want to have something for myself or something for God in general. And so like this product, while it just seems like a product, the thing that most people don't really realize is that it's hot water that I'm talking about. I actually put in a provisional patent, not on the product itself, because if you look at the product, it's 5 ingredients. You can't really patent that. But the process of diluting this into 32 ounces of hot water, wiping everything on your surfaces with a wet rag, and then going over them with a buff rag, that's very intentional. And if you look at the Bible, there's a lot of references to warm water as spiritual cleansing and ritual cleansing. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I bet before the Industrial Revolution, everybody used to clean like this. Because what other way would you clean? There was no spray bottles, you didn't spray things. No, if you wanted to clean your house, you put water in a bucket, you figured out what kind of herbs and stuff you wanted to put in there to aromat, make your house more aromatic. And then you went to town, you started washing things and drying them, right? And so what I think this could mean to the market is a return to a world in which we don't just clean for our own self-satisfaction or for, sanitation, right? Because we're worried about our kids getting E. coli in their food or bacteria and stuff like that. But we're cleaning as, a form of worship or a form of honoring both God and your household. And
That's
so
amazing.
if I can put out a product that does that, oh my God, like
Yeah.
that would be
But
the
maybe it
holy
seems
grail.
like a door open for you by doing what you did in your business, allowing you to spend time on that, which might be something that is God driven.
Yeah, I think what I'm my whole. I mean, the way I'm doing it, I'm calling it a two-way concentrate because there on the one door there is the spiritual cleansing, there's the hot water, the purification, and there's science behind it. Like it opens up the surface of your. It opens up the pores in the surface you're cleaning. It delivers a cleaner load, makes things brighter, more fragrant, that kind of stuff. But then there's door two. You could also dilute this stuff into a 16-ounce bottle of cold water and use it as a spot sprayer. You do either or, and what I recommend to
Right.
people is you do both. Like I would do mostly spot sprayer on a day-to-day basis, but then once every other weekend I would do a hot pot and I would clean every surface and really get my house nice and deeply clean. And if you do that, if you mix and match and do both, you could make 3 of these bottles stretch an entire year. So 3 bottles will clean every surface in your house for an entire year.
That's incredible.
And
That's incredible.
in an economy like now where you don't really want to be importing stuff from China, I'm doing everything made in America. My whole entire supply chain made in America. And it won't cost you $3,000, right?
Right.
I'm trying to do it in a way where it focuses on glass bottles, reusable, not single-use plastics and stuff like that. I'm also not going to sell you all the, I'll sell you extra bottles because I can get a really good deal on wholesale on them, but I'm not going to fill them up with water. I'm going to let you do that on your own. So I won't sell you a empty glass bottle for $15. I'll sell it to you for like 4 or 5, and you can put the water in it, and you can dilute the concentrate in it, and that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Last question on your faith. What are your thoughts on the show The Chosen?
I love The Chosen. I don't think I'm completely up to date on it. I watched like the first few seasons, but from what I can tell, it seems pretty close to the Bibles that I read in terms of their interpretation and what actually happened. I think my favorite sequence of events was obviously Matthew and the Sermon on the Mount and delivering that piece of that masterpiece of scripture and faith. And obviously it's probably the prayer that more people in the world have said over and over again for two millennia. So getting to kind of see a little bit of the personality with such production value, I think is really big because despite the fact that the Bible has been the most popular book ever written, you never really had Hollywood get behind it. So you don't really have a lot of great, films that are made the way that other Hollywood films are made. So like, if you're like me, like you tend to resonate to things and you tend to appreciate things that have a high production value. That's probably why I gravitate towards science fiction and stuff like that. Cause I like the marvelous spectacle of what's
the
unfolding.
Possibility, right.
The possibility, but just even like, the magnificence of the colors and the action, the sound and stuff like that. A lot of the old biblical tales that are on film, they haven't really been, there hasn't been a ton of them created since like the 1960s or 70s. So like all you have to go off of are like Ben-Hur and stuff like that was out when my dad was a kid, like
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I appreciate The Chosen, if nothing else, because they tried to do something that Hollywood wasn't doing.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing we do before we let everyone go is the reason we call this Tell Me 3 Things is we want you to tell us 3 things about yourself that someone, maybe even your wife doesn't know, that is just out of left field that would give you a little bit more insight as to who you are.
3 things. Okay. Well, that's a really interesting one with the wife because we've been together for 14 years, going on 20
well, it
years.
doesn't have to necessarily be about her. How about the public? Tell us 3 things that most people might not know about you.
Okay. When I was 21, I lost over 100 pounds. I did that by running every day for like a year and a half. And I didn't go to college until after that was completed. Not because I had some like very weird idiosyncratic sequence of events that had to happen, but when I graduated from high school, I was very immature and not ready to go to college and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. When I was going on that journey, that weight loss journey, I kind of found out a little bit more about myself and what I wanted to do. And because I was going to have to take out student loans and my parents didn't have the money to send me to college, that's when I decided to get my butt into gear and get down to college and do all that. And when I went, I was so confident, fired out of a cannon, got straight A's. It was great. And that's one or two things. What else? I'm trying to think of something very poignant here. Let me see. I had one of my best friends died a couple years ago of terminal cancer, pancreatic cancer. It was
sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think a lot of people go through loss in life, and he was 41 years old, left behind 3 kids, and it was just one of the greatest guys that you'll ever meet. And I miss him every day. And his story, helps. That happened like a lot earlier in my, faith journey. So getting saved was very important at that time of my life, because I don't know where I would have been, and how my mood and my spirits would have been had I not really been, in the Bible every day. And to be honest with you, going through COVID was pretty rough. I was glad that I was going through it, being somebody that was, recently called to faith. But yeah, I think faith got me through those 2 situations where ordinarily, I don't know what would have happened otherwise, because it was a heartbreaking story.
Well, thank you for sharing both of those with us. I want to thank you so much for spending a few minutes. It went a little bit longer than I expected, but you're an interesting guy, and I could probably, I had other things to ask you about, the Washington Commanders and all of that stuff, but we can save that to another time. I just really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Go Commanders, go Jaden Daniels. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say other than I'm on the bandwagon. I've been on the bandwagon since I was 3, so it's hard to kick me off of the bandwagon.
Well, up here in New England, we're having a little bit of a renaissance, after a couple down years. So I think we're still a ways away. I think Washington, I'd love to see Washington, back in prominence. I think it's important for the league,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So after 3, actually, funny enough, you want to connect that to the Bible. It's not quite the same amount, but like, if your listeners or your viewers want to be heartened by something and you're recently called to faith, just understand that the job is not over. A lot of times God brings you out of your torture chamber and brings you into the desert before you can get into something that is your true calling. So becoming to faith might look like 40 years wandering in the desert before you find Jerusalem. That number 40 happens over and over and over again in the Bible. The Commanders happen to be down for almost 40 years before they became good again. So keep that in mind. It's not an easy journey following Christ, but it's a worthwhile journey.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I will be in touch. I appreciate it. God bless you.
Yeah, no problem. God bless you. Bye.
All right.